until Christmas evening. That's just kind of how it goes around here. So,
So Greg was telling me the first Tim Hortons opened up in Texas yesterday.
Really? Well, we've stopped by, my wife and I, we stopped by Tim Hortons once and we didn't get anything.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in New York, upstate New York, I stopped by a Tim Hortons. I didn't really get nothing. Maybe I should have.
Oh, you're on your Cooperstown trip.
Yeah, one of my Cooperstown trips.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, Bob, how's it going? Can't hear you, Bob.
Maxwell, I asked how much snow you had.
A dusting. It's not terrible. Good. It's about the same as what we had in Houston when I spoke at the SABR meeting.
Remember.
So, Joe, as promised, I told you I was wearing an 80s pop cultural Christmas sweater.
Let me see what you got.
A Howard the Duck Christmas sweater. We had a Christmas sweater contest at work last week, and I thought I'd get this one because I knew nobody else would have it.
Not a Howard the Duck. No, that's a unique reference.
We used to have a guy in my office named Howard, and I always used to call him Howard the Duck.
Did you have a prize for the best sweater?
They did have a prize for the best sweater. Unfortunately, the prize was won by one of the partners who was disqualified. It was actually, you know what? It was a red sweater and it had Homer Simpson wearing a Santa hat.
Interesting.
Yeah. So why was he disqualified?
Huh?
Why was he disqualified?
He was one of the partners.
Okay, so were you the runner-up?
No, everybody got the prize.
Oh. Well, I like your Howard the Duck one.
Thank you.
The older I get, the more I appreciate my my 80s decade.
Yeah.
The time I became my own person.
When I went to the SABR convention in St. Louis, Joe, I learned that Howard the Duck was based on a real person because I met that guy in the airport. He told me his friend was a cartoonist and that the guy's name was Howard. He created a cartoon named after him. And I'm going, yeah, you're pulling my leg. I go home, look it up on Wikipedia. Sure enough, the guy who created Howard the Duck was from St. Louis and was the same age as this Howard guy.
Fascinating story.
Yep.
Patrick, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you guys doing?
It's fine. Mr. Trivia over there.
You're the one from upstate New York.
Yep.
Was it Schenectady?
Yeah, that's where I lived for a while, but Fort Plain is where I grew up, just north of Cooperstown.
Okay. Along the 28.
Yep.
Yeah, I've done that drive many times from along the 90 to Herkimer and then south to Cooperstown.
Okay. Yep.
Well, I'm not sure how many new members they're going to show.
So far, 0.
4. It's the Fantastic Four here today.
So far, we've got more members of the chapter who were in Baltimore for the convention than we have new members.
Well, I'll tell you, one guy who I met on Twitter, ironically, besides Tony, of course, our speaker, named Kobe, he asked me about the chapter a couple of years ago, and I was going through my messaging on Twitter, and I hadn't talked to the guy in a while. I asked him if he was still interested because he hadn't joined. He was like, "Sure, I'm still interested." He's looking for a local chapter to join, and sure enough, he joined that afternoon.
Fantastic.
Because I got that email from Jessica, that says all the new members. And
Jessica Smythe.
Yeah, and she sent out these emails, and we've had, like I said, 4 or 5 people join since last month, it seems.
Oh, great. I gotta show you something. I'm ready for Monday night.
Ooh. Let me ask you though about that. I'm one for supporting everybody that writes, but when the hardcover copy of that is $30, right? From Amazon. The Kindle copy is $10. So I'm like, man, and it's December already. So what do y'all think of that? I mean, when the price difference is that much, I mean, what do you think? Bob, you're old school. What do you think of that? Do you read anything on a Kindle?
Oh yeah, Peg and I read fiction. Usually an author will give us a discount as a SABR chapter. Now I realize we have a distribution situation, but many times they'll come in and cut the price by a third or more, especially if they carry the book into the meeting, which he won't. So you might ask him.
He did give us 20% off or something like that, but
30%.
it was 30%.
Okay.
Yeah, 30%. But and that was from the Texas A&M site. So even that is just I don't know. I saw that and I'm going back and forth on it still. Now, it's not a problem of me being able to read it. It's just a matter of what do I want to spend the money on right now? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I was going to get that 30% off copy from Texas A&M, but it's only for U.S. orders. Fortunately, I was able to get it 100% off because the prize for participating in the Howard the Duck Christmas sweater contest was an Amazon gift card. Otherwise,
Excellent.
no, I wouldn't have bought the book.
What does it look like? Have you browsed through it? See if you like it?
It's the first few chapters, you've got a social history of North Carolina in there, which you lived there at one point. You probably lived through some of what he wrote about. He talks about his family. He talks about civil rights. He talks about, or he talked about Gaylord's family. He didn't write the book. He talks about when Gaylord met his wife, and his wife was upper class and he was working class, and the issues that proposed. And it talks about the struggle he had just getting to the major leagues, that Jim was supposed to be the star, and yet Gaylord was the one who got this big bonus. And so far, I've got about as far as the 1962 World Series. And he also talks about racism in San Francisco at the time, which was not as progressive a city in 1962 as we tend to think it would have been. And somebody like Alvin Dark would have been a much better manager for the urban culture of San Francisco at that time than for the roster of the Giants.
Wow.
So it covers a lot. Well, I should hope it covers a lot. You see how thick the book is.
Yeah. And
Now, has anybody here read Me and the Spitter, Gaylord's first book?
No, I haven't.
No.
It was written in the 70s when he pitched for the Indians. And I did read it, but I read it about 20 years ago. I don't remember it. The one thing I remember was he said he didn't drink, which if you've ever met Gaylord, you know that's a lie.
Who printed the book, Maxwell?
This one?
Yeah. I mean, it's not McFarland. Is it McFarland?
No, it's Texas A&M.
Okay, I got you.
No,
Okay, because McFarland has deals from time to time, certainly get by at the convention.
Speaking of McFarland, has there been any traction on David Jerome's book on Bill Verdon? Nothing.
Nothing so far. I talked to Tal the other day.
Yeah, that's disappointing.
yeah, I don't understand why people wouldn't why they wouldn't want to publish that or get it out, or unless there's a problem with the family or something. I don't know. I mean,
well, you saw that Shirley Verdon was at the meeting with David Jerome for Terry Poole last month. So I would think they're on friendly terms.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know.
That's what we get out before she passes, that'd be
Yeah.
good lady.
Speaking of new books, have y'all checked out Bill's new book? Bill Brown?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Have you?
No.
His first
Oh, you got it.
fiction. His first attempt at fiction.
Oh, fantastic.
And I was thinking, we don't have a guest for February, I don't think. Bob is graciously volunteered among other people to help me put some guests together. I mean, we have a person for that, don't we, Mike?
Have you,
Bob?
have you had any luck with Mike Floyd?
No, I haven't heard from Mike.
No.
We need to get Randy Smith before the season starts. So
Tal Smith.
Randy. I'll call Randy.
What's he doing now, Randy Smith?
He's still scouting for Arizona, I think.
Yeah, he was the GM of the Tigers at one point, I remember.
Yeah, I met him at Tal's Hall of Fame induction. He was there, and we had a nice conversation.
Very
he lives
nice.
here in Houston. He lives here,
Mhm.
actually in the Woodlands, if you want to be precise.
Nice area.
Nice fella, nice family.
Mhm.
And he said, yes, he'd love to do it if it works with his schedule, as so many tell us.
Well,
we got some others. We got who's the former general manager of the Phillies and the Astros? Ed
Wade.
Ed Wade said he'd be glad to talk to us. And he drafted so many of the former or the team we have, and then he got fired. This will happen.
Well, that was because
I should say he signed a bunch of them, and he said he'd be glad to talk. But again, that's general manager stuff.
That was because of the regime change that he got fired.
Right.
You know what happened? Are any of you members of Baseball Way of Life on Facebook? It's Stan Phillips group.
No.
Anyway, he posts a lot of vintage baseball pictures, and he posted this one picture of one of the Phillies hot pants girls from the 70s. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, that's Arlene. And it was her. I sent it to her. She said, holy shit, how did he get a picture of me on there?
You will be surprised.
Speaker. She was interesting. Let's put it that way. Different.
Oh, she was a very good speaker.
So, Ryan, have you, not Ryan, Patrick, have you read a lot of baseball fiction?
Not a lot of fiction.
Not a lot of fiction. I want to get Brownie to talk about the difference between writing about nonfiction and fiction. Yeah. I think he could do that for an hour.
That would be interesting.
It would be, because he's done so much writing about nonfiction, baseball stories, and he says in this book, he posted on Facebook, he's talked about this in this book right here. This is the first time he's ever done fiction. So I'm wondering what the thought process and how different that is, for him. And I know he could spend a lot of time talking about that. So I want to recruit Brownie to talk to us.
Okay.
Maybe in February or also. So
yeah.
Maxwell, you brought up San Francisco a little while ago, and San Francisco has been in the news lately, the former Astro. What do you think of the Carlos Correa mega super deal?
Watch him back out of it after a year or two when he finds out some other infielder is making more money than he is.
It's the fourth largest contract in history, isn't it?
I know.
Largest shortstop.
It's ridiculous how these guys can sign these mammoth contracts and then back out of them after a year or two. It's the way I was brought up. You sign a contract, you honor it, and that's that.
Yeah.
That was one that was, 13 years was his?
13 years.
Yeah.
Just absurd.
I agree.
He's got to also meet some of his former Dodger players who are on his team now, and have to have a little discussion with him about cheating.
Right.
They say there could be some issues to start off with Carlos and some of his teammates. I think that'd be delicious.
It reminds me of when the Giants brought up a guy named Joel Chemelis, an infielder, during the 1995 season, knowing that he had crossed the picket lines. And the other players refused to play with him, so they had to send him back down.
Oh, wow.
They said, if he wears the uniform, we're not taking the field.
Who is that again? My speaker went out.
His name was Joel Chemelis.
Joel Chemelis. Okay. So do you think this is going to be a problem for Carlos?
Could be.
If he hits and he fields, he'll have no problems. The fans will love him to death.
Yeah, they are going to love him to death. And I just was sitting back laughing this whole time the Dodgers didn't want to sign. I mean, what do y'all think about that? The Dodgers didn't want to sign him because they didn't want to tick off their fan base. I mean, what?
Now, I think the Dodgers, even though money's not an issue with them, knew that it was going to be a ridiculous contract that he's going to back out of in 2 years, and going to have to keep paying him whatever the record-breaking shortstop contract's going to be for at least the next 5 or 6 years. So,
Well, there was actually a similar incident that happened here one time. Go back to the 80s, there was no baseball player more unpopular in Toronto than Dave Winfield. Because when he was a member of the Yankees, he threw a warm-up toss before the game at Exhibition Stadium that hit and killed a seagull. And so they would boo him mercilessly for years after that. Then you get to 1991, and the Blue Jays are one piece of the puzzle short of going to the World Series.
Right.
They need a good DH. They signed Dave Winfield for a year. Is this going to be a problem? Dave Winfield ends up leading the World Series and all of a sudden becomes the most popular person in the country. The point that 30 years later, when the Blue Jays had their celebration of the 1992 team, Dave Winfield shows up at Canadian Customs. The customs officer recognizes him and just says, "Just go. I know who you are."
Yeah, it's funny. Fans have really short memories, don't they? As long as you're on my team.
yeah. As long as they're wearing the right uniform, that's all that matters.
I mean, you look at
They
Marlon
remember
Gonzalez
us. Come on now. They all remember.
Yeah,
the
they're not
Astros.
going to let people. It's funny how people hold the Astros to a much higher standard. When you talk to Mike Vance, you talk to any number of other people, there were at least 3 teams, and probably a lot more than that, who were doing the same thing and didn't get caught.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much evidence out there, but you know what? The way I look at it now is, the Astros and the Patriots, they kind of thought of the same way now. So fine, we'll just win a couple more championships like the Patriots did, and hey, whatever. We're the villains, I guess.
Well,
fine.
My theory about that is, if you look at the revenues in baseball in 2016, there were 4 teams: the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, and the Cubs, who outgrossed the other 26 teams. So when you've got 4 teams who may be doing some paralegal activities with sign stealing and so forth, 3 of them are the big revenue generating teams, and the 4th one's the Astros. Who do you think Major League Baseball is going to throw under the bus?
Yeah.
Well,
Bill Brown was telling me the other day, and I don't think I'd ever heard this before, but all the gambling that they support and promote, Major League Baseball does, each team got at least $20 million from the gambling people. And that's going to increase. You don't think that's going to have an effect at some point on the game? Well, more and more betting. And yeah, Pete Rose is still a bad guy, and whatever. But now they're promoting gambling.
Pete Rose is another one that they wanted to make an example of. You go back to the 70s, there were probably no 2 players who were more hated among opponents than Steve Garvey and Pete Rose. And so I think it was the same week in spring training 1989, both of them got in trouble. Rose for gambling and Steve for having too many kids. And now that's all anybody remembers about either of them.
Yeah.
Steve Garvey was not the only one in baseball who did that. And yet he's the only one that people remember for doing that.
You remember when the Yankee players traded wives?
Fritz Peterson and Mike Kekich.
Yes. Different standards, different days.
Fritz Peterson was on Facebook for years. He'd come up with a different Yankee story every day, and then he got sick, so the Yankees got 2 other guys to do it. They got Ron Bloomberg and Roy White are doing that now instead.
Wow. I just I find it funny. Boy, there seems to be a pattern here. Baseball looks for a fall guy, and that's how history remembers that era.
Right.
So it's when they talk about the Yankees in the late 90s, they talk about how great they were. But at least one player that I know of, probably a lot more, probably were doing stuff that wasn't really kosher, kind of against the law, steroid stuff. I mean, you hear about Clemens and Pettit. But how many of y'all hear about or know about Jim Leyritz and his problems? And he was the big man, wasn't he, for a while?
Didn't he kill someone in a drunk driving accident?
I think so.
Or did they
I think
kill him
so,
like
but-
severely injured? I know something like that, but yeah, that was really, I think, a headline for a day and then kind of never talked about.
Doug Lyons wrote a book about Jim Leyritz, and it talks about all his legal troubles in there. I have a copy. I never actually read it, but I know he served time for something. I don't know if it was armed robbery but he was. Well, Barry Bloom made an interesting point yesterday on Facebook that the Braves of the 90s only won one World Series.
Right.
And yet there are 5 players on that team who are in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
The Yankees won 5 World Series, and only 4 players from those teams are in the Hall of Fame. And 2 of the 4 were at the end of their careers, Wade Boggs and Tim Raines.
Wow.
Interesting.
So I saw online also that somebody did a rundown of the 21st century champions. And I guess I knew this, but I didn't really think about it. But do y'all know who has the most World Series titles in the 21st century?
Boston Red Sox.
Red Sox.
They have 4.
Mm-hmm.
The Astros have 2. The Giants have 3.
Giants have 3. They should only have 2 because the Tigers should have won in 2012.
So I guess, that in order for the Astros to cement their place as the team of the 21st century, especially the early part, they need what? 3 more?
3 more.
3 more World Series?
I think what makes the Astros different, I mean, the Red Sox, all 4, well, I guess, 04 and 07 were pretty much the same teams, but their teams were, a couple of key players were the same, but were very different. I mean, the Astros have this sustained, 6 or 5 years in a row going to the ALCS and 4 World Series. I mean, that's the same. And when you look at the success too of, some of the, obviously Altuve's been there, some have been there, but the number of players that have changed throughout the 5 years and still being able to, have 100-win seasons and deep playoff runs is really impressive.
The question is who's going to fill Verlander's shoes now?
Do you need to fill Verlander's shoes?
Maybe, maybe not. And
Well,
is Verlander at age 40 going to be the same pitcher as he was this year?
You better hope so for $43 million a year.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve Cohen better hope so.
Yeah.
Which honestly, if you look at it from the Mets point of view, they took that money that would have been DeGrom's money and said, okay, we're going to give Verlander 2 years of the same money, but a much shorter, much less liability long-term, especially when you look at DeGrom's injury history. I don't think he's had a complete season since 2018, 2019. I mean, he's, and you say, okay, well, do you take your chances with a 40-year-old Verlander who's been relatively durable for 2 years, or DeGrom hoping that he's less injury prone for the next 5?
Yeah,
I was telling my
Rangers-
wife the other day that when I'm older than all you guys. I'm in my 80s. Sorry, but that's the truth. But I can name every player on every team when I was growing up. I knew them all from only 16 teams back in those days, and I knew them all. I'd have a tough time today naming the managers
Yeah.
I know.
of all the major league teams, much less the players. It's like, I don't know,
I know.
merry-go-round. They all keep changing. Weird.
We had a discussion at a SABR meeting in Vancouver one time when I was there. What year did you stop following the current game? And for most people, it was when they were in their early 20s. That they know the players of their childhood and their adolescence backwards and forwards. But once they started college or once they started working, there were other priorities.
I would say in college, I did was it 1 year in college, 1 year out of college, I did fantasy baseball
Mm-hmm.
for 2 years. But then just the daily, I think it was when I was out of school, the daily grind of keeping up with everything, as long as like it was just too much. It was like, I can't do it with the setting the lineup every day.
Yeah.
So I would say it was probably somewhere in there, like early 20s, where it was like, all right, now I can't name.
Yeah.
There's certain teams I'm like, couldn't name a single player on the team.
Yeah, but Patrick, don't you think? I understand what you're saying. I agree with y'all. I mean,
one of my favorite teams, if the Astros still hadn't won the World Series, would be that 86 team, the 86 Astros, but don't you think playing fantasy almost forced you to know what players are where? And it also made you more knowledgeable of baseball.
Absolutely. But then it just got to be too much. And then once I stopped, it was just like, all right, I can't, not keeping track of this as much.
Well, I'm asking you that because Bob McCann does the fantasy. He talks about fantasy baseball every year, doesn't he, Bob? Yeah, and I've talked to Bob McCann already about maybe doing fantasy with him this year. So, I may recruit you.
Tom has his own league. He's the commissioner of his own league, and he's invited me to go to the draft. And you talk about serious stuff. We got 8 guys in that room, and they're bidding on players and trading players, and how much money do you have left in your budget? I mean, it's like big business. They're having a blast. Yeah,
I remember that, and that's why I talked to Bob. I think it was about 2 months ago, 2-3 meetings ago, about maybe joining his league this upcoming year. So, so do y'all think? So, are the Astros primed with Jose Abreu to win another one, or do we need Varsho, or do we need one of those Diamondback outfielders to sort of fill the holes? And who are we going to give up? Do we need one of those Arizona guys, or is Abreu enough?
I mean, I think, especially with the expanded playoffs now, get to October and then have the pitching to get you deep. That's really all that really matters.
Good point.
So you don't think we should trade for Brian Reynolds of the Pirates, or one of those hotshot Arizona outfielders that Varsho and there's a couple of others. Armstrong, I think that's one that you keep hearing about.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, you can never have enough weapons, but at what cost? What are you willing to give up?
Yeah. So you don't think we need to make any more moves? We're set. Crane's done. We're done as far as you are concerned.
I mean, I think that I was looking to make more moves. I think if the season were to start with the current roster, I feel pretty confident.
Are you well? As it stands right now, we don't have Yuli and we don't have Brantley. So you're fine with that?
Well, yeah, I guess I forget that they're still unsigned, but
well, I guess
Maxwell, what do you?
I guess the other question to ask is, what have the other teams in the division done? Has Seattle improved itself?
Well, you talk to Rangers fans, they won the World Series. They got DeGrom. you know how they are.
As forget about Oakland and forget about Anaheim.
You mean the Las Vegas A's?
The question is, have they done enough? But the other question is, what more do they need to do? I mean, they may not need to be the best team in the world to win that division and to make their way through the playoffs.
But don't you think Seattle is the second best team in the American League?
Yes.
Think about that.
And then Texas, yes. In my opinion.
I mean, in the in the whole league, Bob. The Yankees.
Whole league. Let me think.
What do you think? Because I remember listening to these MLB Tonight guys, Harold Reynolds, and all these guys, and say, you know what? It's the Mariners that are probably the best team in the American League besides the Astros. Y'all agree with that?
I would put the Mariners in a category with 2 other teams. One is the Blue Jays, and one is Tampa. I would put those 2 teams at the same tier. Those 2 teams at the same tier as Seattle and behind Houston.
I would almost make the argument that Cleveland, if they're not there, is just behind the Tampa and Toronto, Seattle.
Yeah, Cleveland has the good fortune playing in a god-awful division.
Yeah.
They can win that division with 85 wins.
I was going to say, you can sleepwalk through the division. As long as you're 500, you're going to win that division.
Yeah. Comedy Central.
Yeah.
So what about the Orioles?
I like the Orioles. I thought they had a good team that we saw at the convention. I don't think they've improved themselves. And I think there's a cloud over that team in terms of dysfunctional ownership, and the stadium lease coming due at the end of the year, are they even going to be playing in Baltimore in 2024? We don't quite know, do we?
Oh, well, hold on. That's some news for me. I mean, maybe I should get my head out of a book once in a while. What are you talking about? Baltimore.
The lease on Camden Yards expires at the end of this year.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's no talk of them moving, is there?
Behind the scenes, there's not official talk, but there's some speculation. I know Dave Stewart's trying to bring a team to Nashville.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tampa Bay's not moving, evidently, right?
Well, they're moving from St. Petersburg to Ybor City in a stadium that doesn't exist.
I don't know. I don't know. I just couldn't imagine the Orioles leaving Baltimore. But I guess that's a possibility, you know. So
It would really be unfortunate for the game if they did.
yeah.
I mean, the other thing about the Orioles is their attendance and especially their television market has really been hurt by the presence of the Nationals in Washington.
Yeah.
Because Orioles used to draw a lot of fans from DC and from Northern Virginia. Those are all Nationals fans now.
Yeah, and when you look, I mean, the Nationals had Bryce Harper for a while, then they had, 2019. So they've had, I mean, they suck now, but they had success and had star players that would, draw the television viewers.
Yeah, I could see that because that whole area within 100 miles, they got the Orioles, the Nationals, and the Phillies, right?
Yep.
Within 100 miles of each other.
And mind you don't see too many Phillies fans going to Nationals games. You might see people from Delaware going to either Phillies or Orioles.
Uh-huh. Well, I don't know. Bob, you had mentioned that Sig is doing a good job up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I think so. Given the finances, I think they're going to be a contender. No, they're not going to win, but I think they'll be a contender down the road. Another dark horse is the White Sox. They've been adding people a little bit. So as far as I'm concerned, they may be in the running there in that Midwest area, Central Division.
Well, we're going to be watching that team play at the SABR convention. Those of us who decide to go.
Yeah, they signed Benintendi, right? Benintendi.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah, that's big money.
Mm. He was a what's that award that Jana Hauser hands out for the college players? Anyways, he won that. He was one of the players who won that.
Mm.
This is Dick Hauser's daughter.
Yeah.
She spoke at our convention, if you remember, back in
Right.
2014. Nice lady.
So where do the Yankees fit in all this? They got Rodon now.
Well, they got some money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's their biggest offseason moves, right? Rodon and Judge wasn't really a
Re-signing
move.
Judge.
Yeah.
I mean, that was it,
They
right?
ain't choice. No choice.
Yeah, you know what? I thought Judge was going to get $1 billion. I was off by a couple $100 million.
Has anyone ever made a smarter decision betting on themselves at the beginning of the season, turning down, what was it, 20 whatever million, and then going out and having one of the best offensive seasons in history, and then pretty much could say, all right, I'm going to write whatever amount I want.
I guess, but I just.
Yes. Andre Dawson, 1986. The Expos offered him 2 years, $1.2 million each year. He said no. No other team was coming forward with a contract. The Cubs, in spring training of 1987, approached him with a blank contract, which he ended up signing for $500,000. Hit 49 home runs that year, filed for free agency, signed a mammoth 5-year contract after the season.
Okay. So was that the year he was the MVP?
Yeah. Awesome Dawson, they called him.
Oh, I don't know. I guess Giants fans may feel a little betrayed. A lot of them thought that maybe Judge was coming. Let me ask you, if Judge would have signed with the Giants, did you think they would have signed Correa?
No,
No.
I don't think they would have been a better team if they had signed Judge.
Okay.
I don't think it would have helped them. What they need is pitching.
The Giants?
Yeah.
Well, hey, they got Correa now. So. For 13 years. I mean, wasn't it Fernando Tatis that started this whole trend of 11 years, gazillion dollars or whatever it is?
And how many at bats did he have this season?
Or was it Pujols that started it? Was it Pujols that started it, or was it Tatis?
Well, would you go back to A-Rod with the Rangers in, what was that, 2000, before 2001 season?
Yep.
How long was his?
His was 10 years, right? Because then he opted out, or was going to opt out. That's why they traded him to the Yankees. And
he still opted out.
Yeah, he still opted out, and then they re-upped for another gazillion dollars in 10 more years.
So you really think Correa is going to opt out from the Giants in a couple of years?
I mean, how many of those 10-year deals actually make it 10 years? The player lasting through the original contract.
Pujols was never as good after he signed with Anaheim as he was in St. Louis.
Great.
That's right. But I mean, Correa is young enough. They'll probably get 6-7 years out of him. You think, or you think he's going to get less? You think he's going to miss winning, or do you think? I don't know.
He'll do whatever his agent tells him to do.
I think.
Does he have an opt?
Go ahead, Bob.
Does he have an opt out? The Correa? I know he has no trade in there, but does he have an opt out? I haven't read that he does. So can he even opt out? I don't know.
Well, the story that I remember about obscene contracts is my family and I were having brunch about 10 years ago. And that was the week that 3 starting pitchers for the Blue Jays all went down with an injury and were out for the season. And I turned to my dad and said, well, at least my team didn't lose 3 starting pitchers in a week. And then he turns to me and said, oh, yeah? Well, at least my team didn't spend all their money on Percy fielding. Prince Fielder.
Wow. John Heyman tweeted 3 days ago, Carlos Correa and Giants agreed to $350 million at 13 years, no opt-out, full no trade. That's John Heyman.
and then Tatis, Correa gets injured the first day of the season, and what are they left with? That's what I started saying.
I don't know, but I'll tell you what. I was almost, I loved Correa. I loved it that he was here. Part of me wishes he was here, but I'm kind of glad he left because we would have never found out about Pena if he didn't
Jeremy
leave.
Pena, exactly.
But when I found out that Correa signed with the Giants and all this crap about the Dodgers not wanting Correa, I almost went out and bought a Giants hat. I was overjoyed because we all probably know how much the Giants and Dodgers really love each other, and Correa's on that team. It's just going to be TV gold every time the Giants play the Dodgers. Now I'm almost going to sit back and I'm going to have to watch some of that because I remember when I was stationed out there in the early 90s, I would listen to Giants games. This is before the internet as we know it, obviously. So I couldn't really listen to the Astros. So I'd listen to the Giants games and on KNBR. And I'm almost tempted, especially when the Giants and Dodgers play each other now, just to sit back. It's in Dodger Stadium, to sit back there and watch to see how this is going to go. I think it's going to be great. So I don't know about y'all, but it's just. I think it's going to be fun. So we'll see. I don't know. But, Dodgers fans are Dodgers fans. So I guess we've agreed that the Astros probably don't need to make any more trades.
They probably will do something as an insurance policy in case if somebody like Framber Valdez gets injured or something like that, they'll have somebody to replace him. Yeah,
I'm not quite sure how on board I was with all this talk about Chaz McCormick in a trade package. So I don't know. So Chaz has kind of shown that he's a big play guy at times, or a clutch guy at times with catches, especially defense. So I don't know. I mean, we shall see. I say all that, and they'll probably trade for Varsho today. Or I don't know.
Now is that Gary Varsho's son?
I don't know. I just know he's the talk of social media, and these young crop of Arizona outfielders are probably, the way they're talking about them. They're super dynamic. So I don't know why Arizona would want to trade any of them. But, they're not really doing anything, So maybe the Astros will sign Greinke again. I don't.
Did you see that picture of Zach Greinke wearing fisherman outfits at a Seattle Mariners game with his family, and no one recognized him?
Yeah, I saw that picture. I thought that was hilarious.
Yes.
That was during the Astros playoffs, right?
Yeah, that was the
Well, it had to be.
that was the 18-inning game with Seattle.
Do you think he was
He's a
cheering?
guy that's super interesting. I mean, the stories that like teammates tell about him, he's just a character.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. He is. I'm curious to see where he goes, or if he just calls it a career. Jason Castro is the only one that's called it a career, right? This offseason. Isn't
Shows, yeah.
yeah.
Need a catcher. We do need a catcher, folks. Maldonado is not going to hold up for 100 games. I mean, I'm sorry. He's getting up there. He's superior defensive player, but he needs somebody to relieve him. And it seems like when he has a couple of days off, he hits just a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
He's streaky,
That's right.
but he does hit a little bit sometimes. But we need somebody, and I don't know if they have anybody in the minor leagues that's capable.
What about one of the Blue Jays extra catchers? I mean, the Blue Jays have, I think his name's Casey Jansen, and they've also got Alejandro Kirk. They got two good catchers.
Maybe. I think that's why Varsho is getting a lot of play, because he does catch also. So I don't, they got to do something. So we really don't trust, what was it, Corey Lee? We don't really trust him. Isn't that who he is? Corey Lee?
Yeah.
So, I haven't really asked, I haven't really talked to you about it, Bob, Maxwell, Patrick. What do y'all think of our guest on Monday, Tony? I mean, he's the guy that basically showed the world what the Astros were doing. And I haven't really talked, but I thought he would be fascinating for our group. How do you think that's going to go?
I'm super bummed. So I'm flying out for the holidays Monday night. So I'm not gonna be able to make the meeting. I might be able to join on Zoom, but I'm like, if not, I'm gonna have to watch it as soon. And I was like, seems like gonna be very interesting.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I'm bummed not gonna be there in person is just how the dynamic of the room is gonna be. Because I feel like that could be an interesting environment.
But I was thinking to myself, it's December, and Bob kind of reinforced this idea. We really don't have a lot of action in December because it is the holidays. How can I get people kind of interested in this last meeting? Well, I'll have this guy, Mr. Sign Stealing Scandal himself. And this guy's an Astros fan. So I'm just wondering, he's going to show up in person too. So I'm quite surprised. I mean, what do you think, Maxwell, of this guy?
I honestly hadn't thought about. I didn't put two and two together until you brought it up. That's who he was. I was more focused on the other speaker, the guy who wrote the Gaylord Perry book.
Yeah, but Tony Adams, he was mentioned in the Andy Martino, the cheating book. Every time the Astros are brought up, this whole scandal, trash can bangs, it's because of Tony's work. Mm-hmm. That's where they get all this information from. So, but again, he is an Astros fan. So I'm quite curious as to find out, one, why he did this. And two, I mean, what was he trying to prove? And why didn't he look at other teams? Or were the Astros their strategy so outdated and silly that it was easy to track.
Or why did Mike Fiers open up his mouth?
Oh, I have a lot of theories on that. Didn't the Astros pass him up in a rotation or something like that? Wasn't he having problems with the club and disgruntled employee, Maxwell? Come on.
Yeah.
He didn't turn his ring back in, did he? He still kept his ring.
Yeah, he sure did. He sure did. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how this goes, and we'll see.
Do any of you have new rings? I guess they haven't.
Huh?
I guess they haven't been made yet.
No, I thought I know.
No, not that.
Oh, how was
He
your
did
lunch
say
with?
he's giving out 20,000 rings. Excuse me, 2,000 rings. My zero's wrong. 2,000 rings to everybody who had anything to do with the Astros organization. That's pretty nice.
I'll say.
From ushers all the way up.
Very nice.
Maybe not the same ring the players get, but
Oh, how was your lunch with Craig Biggio last week?
terrific. It was terrific. Craig is an interesting person to say the least. For those of you who may know, we had a Hall of Fame, Astros Hall of Fame committee meeting last week. And of course, Craig's a member, and Craig voices his opinion. And he's got a lot of good thoughts about who should or who could be and when we ought to put so-and-so in. So we haven't made any announcements yet, but he was good. He was a real asset.
Bob, would Craig be a potential future guest?
I've tried, Joe. I've tried. Bless his heart.
Yeah.
It's almost to the point. I think I've told you guys this. First time I see Craig, I walk up to him, say, "Hi, Craig." He says, "Hi, Bob." No. Don't ask.
I don't even think Greg was able to get Bagwell or Biggio to come out for the book signings for that book he wrote about the two of them.
Craig does not like to talk about himself. He'll talk baseball, but he does not like to talk about himself. They're talking about his son's issues.
Yeah.
With Toronto, kind of interesting how he's fighting for a job this coming year.
Meanwhile, look at Bo Bichette. Look how well he's doing.
Yeah. So what's the problem with Cabot then, Maxwell? I mean, is he going to get traded?
If anyone wants him.
What does he play? Just second base?
He plays second base.
He plays first base and outfield. He plays three positions.
He can't really hit that well. His fielding was okay before he got injured, but he gets injured a lot. He's kind of a glorified Chris Woodward, let's say.
Okay. So he's not going to have much of a career?
I don't think so. He might have better luck as a coach or a manager or something like that, but I don't see his playing career being that promising. And of course, everyone had such high hopes for him because of his dad.
Yeah. Following in those footsteps.
Yeah.
So
He was a good college player, no question. He did very well at Notre Dame.
yeah.
Meantime, sometimes the son's more successful than the father. You know who Jeremy Pena's father is?
Yeah.
Geronimo Pena.
I remember watching the TV broadcast of when Pena, they were in Anaheim, I believe. Pena hit his first major league home run, and they were interviewing the parents at the same time. I mean, that was just like something else. And your mom is going crazy. It was the first home run of the season for Pena, and they're interviewing the parents right when it happened. That was great.
I don't know if you saw this. It was game of the week. This is going back a few years. The Yankees were playing the Phillies, and John Mayberry Jr. was playing his first major league game. And they were focusing on this guy in the stands who they just assumed was John Mayberry Sr. And they're focusing on him. Next thing you know, Mayberry Jr. hits a home run in his first game. And they're looking at the guy's facial expression. They realize it's not the right guy. And then they find the real John Mayberry sitting somewhere else.
We have a real crisis in this town. Big deal in the TV yesterday. People want Pena jerseys, and they cannot be found anywhere.
That's right.
You would think somebody would have mass produced the suckers for Christmas.
Yeah.
And they just don't have them. Academy, Dick's Sporting Goods, Major League. Nobody's got them. That's how popular he is.
He's captured this town. I mean, we talk about core of the club. I mean, Altuve's coming up. They're going to have to redo his contract, in the next year or so for Altuve. So I thought I saw that somewhere. But the young core of the club is what, Alvarez and Pena now?
Yeah.
Would you say? And Tucker, right? So I don't know. Yeah, it's amazing how much he's captured this town. So I don't know if the Astros are going to be able to keep up with these demands. What's that?
Yeah.
I don't really know how Crane is he going to have to change his mindset, or because if not, these guys are going to leave. They're getting Correa money somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did any of
I don't
you
know.
did any of you go to any of the? I think Dick's Sporting Goods was one of the places where they had a number of Astros players making public appearances right after the World Series. Did any of you go to that?
No.
No.
People lined up for hours.
I'm
Get
sure.
200 lousy autographs on a card that the Astros produced. I mean, you couldn't get a ball signed or a bat signed. 200, they cut you off, and people were outside for hours hoping they'd be on that list. It was very successful from that standpoint. People showed up. We're interested to see FanFest is January 23rd, and we're interested to see if they're going to bring any players in for FanFest this year.
Well, if they want to stir up, they want to get people stirred up and have a lot of people show up. I mean, all they got to do, it seems like, is mention Pena or Alvarez, and everybody in the town will show up.
Well, that's like what the Blue Jays did with bobblehead dolls. I mean, they give away all their bobbleheads at 4:00 Saturday games. You go past the Rogers Center at 10:00 in the morning. They're already lined up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Quite frankly, I've got better things to do with 6 hours of my time than stand in line for a stupid bobblehead.
Yeah. I don't know.
The Astros kind of fooled us. We were kind of upset. The Astros did the same thing. They had 10,000 replica rings available last year. And so people lined up the day before.
Mhm.
But they never told us that subsequently they're going to give everybody a ring. They
Ah,
ended up getting so it's easy to get a ring.
Yeah, I went to, it was one of the games, the last series of the season when they played the Phillies, and they were giving out all the leftover rings from the promotions. And I was just sitting there, I was like, this wasn't advertised. And the person's like, oh yeah, these are all the leftover stock we got to get rid of. There's piles and piles of them.
well, that was what happened in Baltimore. I had bought a ticket for the Saturday game when they were giving away Boog Powell bobbleheads, or Boog Powell figurines rather. And there was a problem with my flight, and I had to go home a day early. So I wrote the Orioles. I said, I bought this ticket that I couldn't end up using. I'm not expecting a refund, but is there anything you can do about it? They sent me figurines not only of Boog Powell, but Jim Palmer and Brooks Robinson.
There you go, Maxwell.
So I
Just
did
clean it
all
out,
right.
man. Okay, so I guess I'll let y'all go here pretty soon. I thought we were going to have some new members. I don't know. Maybe they didn't get my emails. Yeah,
I suggest you try it one more time and see what happens.
Well, at
Different
first
kind of-
time, we had a couple people show up, but we'll see how it goes. But it seems. I mean, do y'all like this Saturday morning thing here?
Yeah, it's fun.
Nah, I enjoy it.
Yeah. So for next year, I mean, I know we have Allison Footer in January, right, Bob?
Yes.
And then talked about Bill Brown, Mike Floyd, Ed Wade, and who's the other person you mentioned, Bob?
Well, another guy I didn't mention, but former Bill Wood, former general managers told me he would be willing to speak. Enos Cabell is kind of a iffy. He'll always agree, but not always come. I'm trying to think. I have 4 or 5 names of people who I've approached.
Do you think
What
we could get
about-
Randy and Tal to talk together in February, or
I don't
just
know. I don't know.
focus
We'll
on
try.
Randy?
We'll try it, Randy. We'll try. I'll give Randy a call this week. See what he says. But you got to give Randy a date. We want you on blankety blank.
What
So-
about
As of most people.
what about Jesse Barfield? Have you approached him?
Yeah.
He's not interested.
No.
Oh, too bad.
February 20th. That's the third February and Monday, or that's the third Monday in February.
Okay.
I'm in. Yeah. So
We've also got Brian McTaggart who will speak, but he's the same as Allison, so to speak. So and he'll only speak off season, so he's probably won't be available. We wouldn't want him back to back with Allison, I don't think.
you don't think he'd talk in March?
Green spring training.
Yeah. Yeah, so he wouldn't do March 20th.
He might, but chances are not. I mean, ask him. I know him well. I talked to Allison last week, and she's excited about. She wanted to know what she should talk about and all that kind of good stuff. She's a delightful lady.
So we got yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. We got Allison on January 16th. February's kind of out in the open. I was going to talk. One person I want to talk to, get to talk to the group is Bill, talking about fiction and nonfiction writing. But I mean, I hate to push back Bill, but we got all these other people like Ed Wade, Randy Smith. We're going to try to get Randy for February.
Yep.
And if we can get a hold of Mike Floyd, I mean, we got March, April, May, June, July, whatever. Maxwell.
Yep.
Keep on Mike. Maybe he can
Mike
respond
Floyd?
finally. Yeah. So
Patrick, what about you? Would you like
Yeah,
to
Patrick.
speak to our group about anything?
Would a topic? I mean, I'm really open to hear anything.
No, would you like to talk?
Oh, me like to talk. I don't have anything to talk about.
Oh, it's baseball. You got something to talk about. One of our Jimmy, y'all know Jimmy Scruggs, right? One of our members. He has asked me if he could talk for a few minutes about his time as an umpire. So we can. I'm thinking about asking him for January after Allison, just for a few minutes, kind of like what I'm doing with David, because David asked just for 5 or 10 minutes about his book. But because of what has happened, I think he's going to need more than 5 or 10 minutes about his book.
Do you think David's going to do a revised edition to cover Gaylord Perry passing away?
I don't know. This one just came out.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a new book out. I guess I don't know how I missed this, but there's a new book out about Caminiti. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
I haven't read it yet.
It came out in March. I ordered it, and it should be here today. I was going to try to get Dan Good, the author, to talk about Caminiti's life. So Caminiti obviously has the Houston connection. So I'm going to read that book over the Christmas break. So I'm curious about that one.
The interesting question to ask about the Gaylord Perry book, and I don't know if there's an answer to it, is if Gaylord knew that the book was released prior to his passing away. I know that he cooperated with David Vaught in the beginning and then stopped. What I've since learned from a New York Times article is that Gaylord had COVID last year and never really recovered.
Yeah.
I don't know how public that is, but I do know it was covered, or public it was when he was alive, but it was covered in the New York Times after he passed away.
I guess that's a question you can ask, Maxwell.
No, the question I want to ask is, how did Topps know to put him on a baseball card in the 1962 set when he was one of 10 pitchers competing for 2 roster spots on the team? And it was a low-numbered card too, so it would have been issued early in the season.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I wonder what he's going to say about that. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Again, this is December 17th. Patrick, we're probably not going to see you on Monday, but happy holidays.
Yeah, super bummed. So happy holidays to you guys.
Yep, you too, Patrick, Bob, Joe. See you guys on Monday.
Even if you can't come on Monday, you can watch the replay.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I've already got that written down. As soon as it's available, I'm gonna watch it because it's definitely one I'm mad at myself that I've got to fly out Monday. And I looked at all the options. I'm like, oh, can I fly out Tuesday? Wednesday? Just with prices, I'm like, oh, it's the only one that worked on Monday. But I'm like, shoot, gotta miss the meeting.
I was telling Bob this yesterday when I was talking to him. My condolences, Bob. I thought Miami was going to come back and win that game, especially with that last play. I mean, that last play. I mean, you're just 2 yards away from a touchdown.
Joe, I'm still thinking this is about Miami of Ohio played in the Bahamas Bowl, whatever it was. There was on the second to last play, there was what we thought was a targeting issue. The quarterback was hit in the helmet, but the referees declined to call it a targeting. If they'd have moved 15 yards further in, then they probably would have scored on that last pass because they passed the ball down to the 2-yard line. That's just sour grapes, but that's interesting.
Yeah, it is bowl season. So, but I was going to say that Tony announced on Twitter, he has a huge following on Twitter, and he announced that he was speaking at our meeting on Monday. And there was a big response from people all over Twitter that wanted to be a part of the meeting, or at least listen to, or one guy made a couple of comments, tell those baseball nerds that Altuve had nothing to do with it. And I kind of responded, well, we're not all baseball nerds, and we know Altuve didn't really, but we got a huge response from Tony making that announcement. So I'm curious to see how many people are actually going to show up on Zoom or actually watch the meeting replay, or maybe in person. We'll see. So, and SABR in there this week in SABR has our event on Monday as a can't miss event. Not only are we having Tony Adams, but they have the picture of the book that Maxwell showed us. So our event on Monday is the top story and can't miss event for SABR. So we will see.
Thank you for promoting it like that.
Yeah.
You made it happen.
All right, guys. Patrick, happy holidays. And we'll see you in January. Right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
See you Monday.
See you guys. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.